Welcome to the Home Comfort Zone podcast. I'm Theresa, Marketing Manager at All Comfort Services. Today I have a special guest, Lance Owens, Director of Artworking. Hi, Lance.
Hi, Theresa. How are you?
Great.
That's great to see you.
We were just talking about owls, and at this time that we're recording, it's spring, and we hear the first signs of frogs, and usually, and it is, spring peepers that start out at the beginning.
Yes. I would imagine. I wonder if there's a particular kind of home repair that always happens when the peepers start peeping. Like, is this when you're supposed to get your air conditioning checked?
Air conditioning check or sump pump check.
Or your sump
we're
pump.
Getting a lot of rain.
The runoff, right? That would make
Exactly.
sense. So when you hear the peepers, and you're supposed to.
It's your sign. You gotta take action. Well, yesterday I was in my office and I was in a meeting and I heard somebody pounding on the window. It was like a baseball bat kind of lightly tapping. And I opened up the curtain, and there were two Sandhill cranes, and they were checking out their reflection. So I would imagine that they're establishing their nesting site.
Yes.
And so the male, I'm thinking male, is looking around and trying to see if there are any, competing cranes around. And so he went to all the cars, all the trucks, and he pecked on all the chrome, and he pecked on the mirror of the car. So that was quite interesting, and hopefully we won't have the same situation while we're recording right now.
No, if they come, well, we'll just include them in the conversation, I think.
Right.
But that's also, yes, up by our house too, the cranes have made it back onto their roosts and have set up camp for the season. We see them walking up and down the street now, so we know they're home for the warm weather.
And we're hearing them in the skies and all the geese.
Yes, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. I love it. I love the spring in general and the returning of the warm weather. So
right, it's nice. Another chapter. Like I mentioned, he's the director of Artworking, and Artworking is a unique. Tell us about it.
Artworking started in 2006 with the express mission of helping artists with disabilities look to set up careers, basically in the mostly visual arts. And so we did a lot of curriculum around self-employment and microenterprise and figuring out how artists with disabilities could earn income without tanking their health insurance or whatever benefits they might need to live on. And so when we started in 2006, it was really a heavy emphasis, especially on microenterprise and small business development. And then over the years, we've grown to be 45-ish artists that we work with, in a studio that's about 6,000 square feet over off the Highway 51, not far from Farm and Fleet, and Mounds Pet Store, I think, is over there. And so artists come to the studio and they make stuff during the week, and then we look for opportunities for artists to either sell their original artwork or figure out ways to make things based on their original artwork, or look for opportunities, whether it's teaching, a workshop somewhere, or we've done artist residencies in the schools with the artists leading workshops for school-age youth. There's, one artist that works out of Artworking, Romano Johnson, has been in every significant museum and art institution in Wisconsin, has had solo shows at the Museum of Wisconsin Artists, and is shown at the MMOCA, Madison Museum of Contemporary Art, which is what it's called. He was in the Triennial. But most significantly recently, a good friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, Seth Albertson, worked on this giant map for about 10 years and completed it about a year and a half ago. And then it did a short series of exhibitions, once UW-Madison at the Memorial Union, and then it did another 3-month stint at the Central Library, and then very recently UW Hospitals and Clinics bought the map and is installing it currently at their new building that they just built on East Park, which is part of the East Hospital, the American Family Parkway area, hospital complex.
I visited your studio maybe 5 years ago, and Seth was working on that artwork, that
Yes.
map. And the idea is he had an idea of where all the rivers were in the United States, and he drew all the rivers. He
He
filled it.
did.
And I was just, I was speechless. I was so amazed at what he's been doing.
He did it all freehand, and since we can't see it here, like, you know, I'll describe it to you. It's 12 feet long by 7 feet high, and Seth freehand drew a map of the United States to scale, super accurately, without projecting or gridding or anything. He just did it freehand, and somehow it is exactly to scale. And at some point he decided, I think, that the rivers were not the right gauge for, and he went back and reworked the entire map. I think that was the last 5 years, was just reworking the whole map to get it like down to his level of detail and scale that he thought was accurate enough, which meant the map over time took on like thicker and thicker topography, because every place that he had reworked, he had glued fresh pieces of paper down, and so the map itself ends up having like kind of a three-dimensionality. But we didn't, you know, he knew that he wanted to sell it eventually. We didn't know if we would ever find a buyer because it's 12 feet long. And so when Amanda Crown from UW Hospitals and Clinics reached out about the new building, they said, "We love that map. How much?" And I thought, there's no way that they're going to pay what Seth wants for the map. But I quoted the number, and she said, "We'll take it." And
it's a large piece of work, and you need a big space, and it's the right space.
It was a perfect space for it. It's a perfect space. So I'm excited to see it finally. I haven't seen it installed, and Seth hasn't seen it installed yet, but we're excited to. I expect that we'll have a little private viewing of it once it's up, and you will for sure be on the invite list.
That sounds great.
So.
It's great to watch him over the years and develop all his different things. And so back to the art working, is this a unique organization across the U.S.? Is this something that you created?
It is. Artworking is unique to Madison, and it's unique in the sense of we built artworking to meet the needs and priorities of the people that we served in the context of the community that they live in. And so artworking's philosophy and priorities are reflective of our specific constituents. But there are lots and lots of arts and disability programs around the country that are varying degrees of similar. There's a really great one in Chicago called Arts of Life, which is totally worth checking out. And they are probably the closest philosophically, I think, to where I really admire the work that they've done around having the artists be in the position of making decisions about how the program is run, and artists being kind of in charge of how that program was constructed. And so we stole, I won't say stole, because they willingly like shared their information with us, but we definitely emulated some of what they did down there, just because it was so person forward, person centered, person led, I think, was the thing that we really liked about them and still like about them.
And how do you keep it running?
We're funded through a variety of things. We're funded through Medicaid waiver funding for employment, which is one of our primary sources of income. And then secondarily, we're funded through donations and sales and fundraising, not grants as much, just because they're a little bit more independable. And that covers all of the expenses that are not explicitly fundable through our contracts with the state. And so the state of Wisconsin, we contract with for support for long-term support for people with disabilities to work and live in the community. And so, you know, we're always reinventing ourselves. You know, clearly we live in a time when things are changing and shifting, and, you know, a year from now, landscape could be very different. And so we will pivot and plan to figure out how to adapt to whatever, you know, new tomorrow there is.
Are you able to, is it able to be sustainable, or do you need the community to help in some way?
The best way for the community to help is to support the artists, because the artists get 70% of anything that we sell, and then we take 30% to cover expenses, which is paying rent or paying utilities or buying art supplies. And so anytime the people come out either to our events that we're sponsoring or hosting, or come to the shop and buy work from the artists, or our website is really pretty fully developed, and so there's like 4,000 things listed for sale currently on the website, so you can shop the website 24/7, 365, and we'll get a piece of whatever people sell, with 70% going back to the artists. So I think the best thing is come to either events or come and shop at the store. The store is open Monday through Friday from roughly 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. And come see what we do, and then people will donate money, and we've had a lot of luck with raising money through donations without hard pitching people. We don't really knock on a lot of doors trying to raise money. We've had a lot of luck with, usually once people see what we're doing and see how cool it is and see what the outcomes are, then we've had great experience with people being generous with, donating money, which I encourage people to do, of course. But first and foremost, I encourage people to look at the art that people are making, and to come and support the artists, buying tiny things or big things, or a mixture, or a lot of both.
Right.
And
what's the setup there?
The setup is there's a little gallery right as you come in, which is not giant, but ample enough and tastefully decorated. And then as you get into the building, every artist, generally speaking, has a defined space that they work in, individual, which is something that kind of evolved as a result of our pivot around the pandemic when COVID happened. And we tried to create basically spaces where artists could work individually without risk of like sneezing on one another. And so almost every artist has some kind of a discrete space that is theirs for the time that they're there, which means that they can keep their stuff, the projects that they're working, either in their space or nearby. And as time goes on, if we need to increase capacity, I think we'll probably see artists sharing spaces more. But I think one of the things that's different about us than a lot of programs around the country is that a lot of programs, you'll see long tables with people kind of working elbow to elbow, a bit like a sheltered workshop or something. What we've tried to do is we've tried to have people have a little bit more sensory buffering from their fellow artists, so that people can really focus on the projects, and people have the ability to think about projects that are a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more contemporary. And so it's not just limited to drawing and painting, and as such, artworking has a pretty intensely built up kind of a makerspace feel, similar to like the Badgery or Sector 67 or a space like that, where we have, in addition to like people doing a lot of things around painting and drawing and jewelry, we just got a new kiln recently, so people are doing ceramics. There's a little wood shop in the back for building stuff, not so much for fine woodworking, but more for like building elaborate art pieces or frames. We do all of our own framing in-house. There's a giant laser cutter for all kinds of strange things that you can do with a laser cutter, which we use for carving wood blocks for printmaking. We do a lot of printmaking. We do a lot of screen printing in particular. So there's a lot of work with textiles. There's a lot of screen printing of textiles, tea towels. Actually, you got me started on Swedish dishcloths. We hand print Swedish dishcloths in the studio, which is something that we stole from you because of the beautiful all comfort Swedish dish. Do you still have those?
We have some left over, right?
Okay.
We had like 4,000 of those, and
Yeah.
many customers have them already. Yeah, so
Sure.
they'll know what you're talking about.
Yes, when I saw those, we were totally enchanted by them, and we were like, it's a bit like the monkeys in the beginning of 2001: A Space Odyssey. We're turning them over and hitting them on the table and trying to figure out how you did it. And so, we a Swedish dishcloths, which we screen print, which have been really successful for a lot of artists. But I forget where. But lots of, I mean, there's lots and lots of tools, lots and lots of materials. We get a lot of things donated, and we, if somebody donates a lot of something, like somebody recently donated, I think like 3,000 eyeglass lenses, for instance, which sounds totally random, and it is totally random. But if you have 3,000 of something, you can think of a way to make something from 3,000 of something. If you have enough of something, if you have 10 lenses, it's hard to come up with a project. But if you have 3,000,
Like making kaleidoscopes or something?
I think one of the artists is doing these dragons that Stefan Ashley has been doing, making dragons both large and small, and recently had work at the airport.
Oh.
And so Stefan, I think, has plans to use them as
Scales. Nice.
And so I think we're maybe in the process of drilling holes in them so that they can be attached to like a armature of a larger
Wow.
thing. And so
This sounds like the stuff that's going on there is really approachable for anybody to kind of to an entry point into learning about art.
yeah, it is a good way to see, like, just because there's so much strange stuff happening. It's kind of gives you like, well, it doesn't just like, you can make art with a pencil or you can make art with a paintbrush, but you can also make art with stuff you found in your yard. For instance, like there's an artist who does a lot with found plant matter, and she's constantly combing. It was like during, in the fall, sometimes I will follow her around with a bucket and a pair of shears as we gather prairie plants, which she will in turn crush and manipulate and makes solographs from, and make handmade paper, folding bits of plant matter in. Rose Heflin is her name, and her work is just really diverse and kind of wide.
Are we able to see some of these artists?
Yes, there's a great opportunity coming up in Stoughton, actually. We're going to be doing a 2-day gallery night event, I think on the 25th and 26th of April, which is right around the corner, which is what, maybe 3 or 4 weeks from now. And so on that Friday night and I think that Saturday afternoon into the early evening, have you spent much time in Stoughton by any chance?
A little bit.
Stoughton is hard to wrap my head around. Probably pound for pound and inch for inch, Stoughton has the best cultural district probably of any place in Dane County, including Madison. There's a 5-block stretch of Stoughton, and if you line that up against any 5-block stretch of Madison, there are more galleries and more art institutions in that 5 blocks than there are in any other 5 blocks in Dane County. And it starts around Page Street and it goes down to the old tobacco warehouses there on Main Street in Stoughton. And so one of the probably Wisconsin's best known art gallery is Able Contemporary, which is in one of the old tobacco warehouses, and they do a lot of contemporary art, but they're written about all the time in arts, in national and international arts magazines. But there's Able Contemporary, Grand Inspired, Woodland Studios, Overt Art Space. Green Road Pottery, which is also a chocolate store. And then I think it's Ray Zolar has a gallery of his work. And so these 6 gallery and art spaces are going to host this art event, and they're going to feature some work from different artworking artists for that 2-night stretch. And so like Rose Heflin, for instance, and Seth actually will both be Able Contemporary for those 2 nights. And then a number of other artists, Brianna Richardson, Chloe Hogan, and a few others will be at featured at the other spaces for those 2 nights. So that took me a really long. You said, is there anything that they can? Then I take 10 minutes to describe.
No, that's okay. Actually, it may not be the time that I air this show. But,
Okay.
But I would ask a follow-up question: is
Sure.
what future events, like into summer, fall?
Oh, sure. If we were going a little further out, the one that I can say that is the most for sure and the most significant, like going into summer, is Cambridge Fire Festival, which is really cool. It's an arts festival, arts and crafts festival, all around things made using fire. And so there's a lot of ceramics, and there's a lot of forging and welding and glass blowing and glass pouring. And so the last few years, Richard Burkholtz, who is one of the artists that we support, has had his own booth. And this year we decided to expand it and include other artists from Artworking. And they're super, super kind and what's the word? They're such great hosts. Cambridge Fire Festival, they're so welcoming, and they've been so kind to us over the last few years. And then when we said, would you consider having Artworking just have a full booth for the couple of days? And they've just been making sure the booth is like totally accessible, and it's it's close to the bathrooms and all that, just all of the things, printing signage for us even.
So there's lots of outreach, lots of opportunity for the artists to get the message out there. Your focus, though, is to have the artists do their work in their studio.
Yes.
And to grow and develop in that way.
Yes, and help them sell it for sure. We're a vocational program, so helping people earn income from the stuff that they make. We will actually have a barbecue open house sometime in June. We haven't set the date. We sometimes only set the date like 3 weeks ahead. But we do a big open house every June, and we set the tents up out back and fire up the barbecue. And it's a very, very casual affair. But people can come through and see every square inch of the studio, poke at all the different pieces of equipment, and meet the artists, and the artists' families are there. And so once I get the date for that, I'll forward it to you. But look for that in early June. Early to mid-June is when we do that usually. Usually it's about a week apart from Firefest.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So if a parent, someone's watching this, and they're curious, they would like to have their child, or a child wants to be part of this, how can people participate, be one of the artists? What's the process?
Generally speaking, the artists that we support are all eligible for funding through the IRIS program, which is a program for people with long-term significant cognitive and intellectual disabilities in Wisconsin. But if you're eligible for IRIS and you have IRIS funding, then I would say reach out to us. Either you can call the studio, you can email, you can even walk in through the front door during business hours and just say, hey, I'm curious about what you do. And any of us would be happy to talk. If you're not sure if you're eligible for the IRIS program, the first stop is the ADRC, which is on the north side of Sherman, near where Northport and Sherman Boulevard intersect in the little strip mall there, the Wisconsin. It's the Association Aging and Disability Resource Center, which is a state. It's not ARC, it's actually a state organization. It's run by the state of Wisconsin. And so it's where people go to figure out if they're eligible for services. And they will connect you with the resources and services, whether you have a disability from birth or whether you acquire a disability or need support because of aging. They're the state organization that administers that. And
do you have to have a talent and artistic talent to be part of the program?
A little passion and a tiny bit of discipline are all that's required. The most important thing for our constituents is that they like making stuff and that they're willing to come in and make stuff. You don't have to be good at anything. You just have to be able to make. I think that people love the idea of like painting a picture or making a cup or something, but the idea of doing it like for 3 hours a day, every week, doing something like for a chunk of hours every week, week in and week out, I think people don't realize how much work that is, and versus just like taking a class one time, but actually showing up and like, I'm going to make stuff today, I'm going to make stuff tomorrow, and I'm going to do it again next week. I think that's the little bit of creative stamina I think is required. But other than that, you have to be nice. People have to be nice.
Yeah, get along.
Yeah, you have to be nice.
Well, it sounds like a great resource in our community, unique, and I hope it's getting a lot more. I hope it's getting a lot more eyes to see it.
Yeah, right now in particular, it's interesting because this is just we go through these little spurts of like intrigue, and right now I've got a couple, maybe 2 or 3 things like this, kind of in short sequence where people have reached out and be like, we'd like to do a news story, or I don't know if it's every spring, like it always seems like maybe we come out of our winter slumber and then all of a sudden people are really excited about finding out about what we're doing. But this is the beginning of our busy creative season, I think.
It's not even around Christmas time where you get gifts or something.
Yeah,
so it's kind of unusual then, yeah.
But it is, if you think of it in terms of like the retail industry, this is when we make all the stuff for Christmas.
Okay.
By the time September arrives, if it's not made, it's too late. And so this is our busy time for making everything for the holidays is now. And so we're on that same kind of cycle of like, yeah, we should be pricing and tagging come September, but not making at that point. I mean, people are making year round, but at that point.
That's great. Well, I encourage people to check it out for sure. Go to the website at least.
Yeah.
And
thanks.
if people can even go to your shop, they have a little bit of access to see what the building is and maybe see some artists.
Yes. If you walk in through the front door and just be like, I'm curious about what y'all do, then somebody will talk to you. And if it's not particularly busy, then we'll show you around. Artworking.org. Artworking.org.
That's great. I want to ask you a little bit about yourself. What's your background?
My background is I went to school and grad school for fine arts and especially for printmaking, which is what brought me to Wisconsin. So I came out here because we have the #1 ranked printmaking program in the country at UW Madison. And I just loved it so much. At the same time, I've been working with people with disabilities, and I didn't want to stop doing that, and I didn't want to leave Madison. And so here we are now, almost 30 years later, and I still love it here, and I still love working with people with disabilities, and I still love making art. So
that's great combination.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming out and talking to us.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah. I know we've been knowing each other now for 8 years. Yeah, and Seth has been here longer than I've been here. Lance was a job coach. Yep. For Seth and for many years coming out here, and Seth would put marketing materials together, and he's a valued employee. He does great work, and so that's how I got to know about what you guys do, and I got to check out your shop and really enjoy it.
Yeah, he loves working here.
Yeah.
You guys are great. Thanks a lot.
Good.
Oh.